Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 AT&T Byron Nelson Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into, a lot more field changes today. Posted some research to social media, and it's probably going to be or feel like a little bit of a rushed show. There is some severe weather coming in my area, but I do not want to leave you all out without some information to move on in your week with research. So let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is simply the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram, where I posted research around players that have a podium finish at TPC Craig Ranch. So if you're interested in seeing that, give me a follow over at social media. A pretty long thread over there on both Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is also where I place my daily 3 up, 3 down for baseball in DFS. Last I checked, a couple of the suggestions weren't doing so hot, but my lineups sure are. So if you are interested in baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter. I post the daily 3 up, 3 down there. And then Twitter is also where I place my betting cards week after week on the PGA Tour. So absolutely, when the odds came out this morning, I fired off a few wagers and was fortunate enough to get a player at a decent number before the big withdrawal news came later today. So if you haven't heard, we'll get into the field changes right after the intro. But my betting card is on Twitter every week. So if you want to see the wagers that I make every week, then give me a follow over there. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. Have you all made any wagers? Did you get in on the action before the big withdrawal? Who are you focused on for DFS? What kind of players do you think are going to excel here at TPC Craig Ranch? Do you think KH Lee three-peats? I want to hear from everybody. And of course, if you were a winner this past week at the Wells Fargo in either wagers or DFS, feel free to drop in chat. Would love to be able to shout you out. But weather looks like it's coming in, so I want to get through this. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 AT&T Byron Nelson. And we're going to start over, as we do every Monday evening, over at Windfinder and get a feel for what the forecast looks like early on this week. And it looks pretty chaotic. A lot of wind, which is to be expected. This is Texas, after all, well known for windy conditions. So Thursday and Friday looking like a lot of wind in the forecast. 15, maybe even upwards to 20 sustained winds. Gusts in upwards of the upper 20s, maybe even reaching 30. We do have some rain in the forecast as well on Saturday and all of Sunday, so we're hoping it's not a washout, especially the week before the PGA Championship. That would put a damper on a lot of things, but we can only control so much, and I don't have the power to control the weather. So there's a look at the forecast early on this week, so you're going to definitely want to put a lot of focus on players who play well in the wind. So with that in mind, we will move to Fantasy National. And since the beginning of 2021, in moderate and windy conditions, your top wind performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Seamus Power, Adam Scott, Aaron Wise, Jason Day, Alex Smalley, Christian Bezaidut, Maverick McNeely, Adam Hadwin, and Charlie Hoffman. You will notice a very prominent skip that I went through on that top 10. In fact, the number one player in the wind and one of the top players in the field this week, Jordan Spieth, is the big news today. He is withdrawn, citing a left wrist injury, and his status for the PGA Championship is in serious jeopardy, from what I understand as well. So 4 more field changes from last night. Michael Thompson, Camilo Villegas, Lanto Griffin, and Jordan Spieth. Obviously, Jordan Spieth being the biggest name of those 4. Those 4 have withdrawn today, in addition to Peter Malnati, Callum Tarrant, Bo Hostler, Nikolai Højgaard, and Sam Ryder. Those were withdrawals yesterday. So do make note of that moving forward in your research. Those 9 players have withdrawn, and I'll make sure to recap that at the end of the show as well. But there are your top players in the wind in the past 2+ years or so. And with the forecast that we saw over at Windfinder, looks to be a pretty windy tournament this week. So give these guys a pretty considerable boost in your rankings or in your considerations for wagers, all of that good stuff. Even with the amount of wind that's in the forecast, there's been wind at TPC Craig Ranch both years that the AT&T Byron Nelson has been here. That has not deterred the winning score being in the high 20s, minus 25 and minus 26 are the 2 winning scores from KH Lee, but you've had several players in the 20s here at TPC Craig Ranch first 2 years. So the main filter we're going to be using this week and tonight and moving forward is going to be the easy to round or easy scoring relative to par filter. So since the beginning of 2021, your top performers when a round has been easy have been Tom Kim, Seamus Power, Scotty Scheffler, Tom Hoge, Taylor Montgomery, Maverick McNeely, Matt Kuchar, Aaron Wise, KH Lee, and Jason Day. So again, give these players a considerable boost in your rankings or in your wager considerations moving forward this week. TPC Craig Ranch is easy. It's going to play easy even with the amount of wind in the forecast. It is for professionals. It is not a very difficult test of golf. Let's see, a few other things that we can take a look at. I do not want to add the average scoring relative to par. Let's look at long courses. TPC Craig Ranch is 7,400 yard par 71. So still satisfies the long course filter. So your top performers on long courses since the beginning of 2021. Scotty Scheffler, Sam Stevens, Matt Kuchar, Nate Lashley, Tom Kim, Hideki, Harry Hall, Terrell Hatton, Kevin Chappell, Akshay Bhatia, Højgaard, and Jordan Spieth have withdrawn. A little bit of a change from last night now that the Wells Fargo has been loaded, but even with that, mostly the same suspects from last night from the review of last night's top 10 in these total performance filters. Last thing that we're going to do, we're going to take a look at some bent green performance. And I'm not going to use any speed filter this week. The reason being that the greens have measured to average 1 year and to fast 1 year. So we have an equal amount of rounds with fast and average speed bent greens. So all we know for sure is that these are bent. So on bent greens, since the start of 2021, your top putters have been Christian Bezuidenhout, Justin Lauer, Maverick McNeely, Samuel No, Austin Cook, Scott Stallings, Mackenzie Hughes, Seamus Power, Adam Schenk, and Hank Lebioda. Again, Bo Hostler has withdrawn. That's all I'm going to want to do tonight in terms of a review. I want to get through some of these prior leaderboards, figure out the statistics that we really want to focus on. I can tell you one of them will be strokes gained approach. but we're not going to recap that. Let's just jump straight into these prior leaderboards. And last year, in fact, let me bring up the leaderboard with the scores. You can see just the plethora of people that finished 20 under. I mean, minus 20 wasn't even in the top 10. Minus 26 was your winner. You had 25s, 23s. It's low scoring. I'll jump to 2021 as well. 25 winning score that year. Now, nobody finished at minus 20. 21 did finish in the top 5, but still every single round easy. You've got numerous in the upper teens in terms of minus to par. TPC Craig Ranch is just a birdie fest. It is an absolute birdie fest. You have got to go low here to even think about competing. So looking at the strokes gained page view from last year's leaderboard, you can see of the players that finished in the top 16, again, just convenient for ties here. Only one player negative in terms of strokes gained approach, and that player finished at the bottom of the top 16 and finished tied for 15th. KH Lee was very, very good in the statistic, but you didn't have anybody that was barely positive. I mean, these are pretty solid, pretty respectable numbers being put up in terms of strokes gained approach for these players that are competing here at TPC Craig Ranch. Off the tee, much the same, although you do have a few more players that are negative. Bezadenhout will never be known as an off the tee guy. Malnati slightly under field average. But this is a ball striking course, and putting will determine who wins this week. So, let's just go ahead and take a look at 2021 as well in terms of a strokes gained page view. Again, your winner, KH Lee, top 16 due to ties. This is a very similar story. Only one player negative in terms of strokes gained approach. You do have a couple that are closer to field average. Kadira, 1.1 here from Seamus Power, but again, KH Lee, 8.3. Sam Burns, 5.6. Berger, 5, 6.5, 6.2. Just a big emphasis on strokes gained approach. And no player inside the top 16, the first edition at TPC Craig Ranch, was negative in putting. Not a single player. So, two very, very clear stats we're going to be looking at. All right, let's go back to last year's leaderboard. Let's take a look at some driving statistics. I was a little surprised last night to see that driving distance wasn't a huge factor. But there it is. I mean, you got a handful of players that are negative. Now, KH Lee, Ryan Palmer, these are 1 and 2 across 4 rounds. So essentially that is field average. But you don't have anybody that's extremely high up there. In fact, the leader in driving distance, you've got 3 clunkers of made cuts here, 2 missed cuts. Distance just isn't a big deal here. It really isn't, which is, again, surprising to me with it being a long course, a par 71, but distance isn't a big thing. Instead, we're going to be looking at good drives gained. You see a decent amount of correlation. KH Lee was pretty high here. You do have 1 miscut from Henrik Stenson, but overall, some pretty solid correlation. Top 5, top 20. You've got some middling finishes, even a clunker thrown in here, but quite a few top 20s, top 15s, top 10s, middling. So decent amount of correlation there, and at least, again, surprisingly for me, greens and regulation was a big factor. You have to scroll quite a bit before you get to your first miscut in terms of greens and regulation. Now, my working thesis in that is that even though these greens are large, this course is long, so hitting the green is still valuable in that regard for players that maybe just don't have the length. Again, I'm still just surprised that greens is a big deal, but there it is. In fact, when you sort on the leaderboard from last year, only 2 players were negative in greens in regulation. So, pretty telling statistic there. And in 2021, the first year that TPC Craig Ranch held the Byron Nelson, again, KH Lee, slightly less than field average in terms of distance, but still negative. You've got a fair amount of players that are negative. Kadira, Luke Donald, Doc Redmond, Seamus Power, Troy Merritt. These guys, even by the field's standard that week, were less than field average in distance and competing. It's telling to see that good drives gained. There was not a single player inside the top 20 even. We'll expand 2021 to go to the top 20 there. Not a single player negative in terms of good drives gained. Only 1 player negative in terms of greens. And you see Will Zalatoris hit, I mean, that's just a ridiculous video game type number. 14. Just ridiculous. 11, 10. But look at this correlation. That's the best I can describe it to you. 17th, 9th, 9th, 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 7th, 3rd. That's some of the strongest correlation you'll see in terms of prior leaderboards. So greens and regulation, definitely something that we're going to be looking at. Maybe good drives gained as well, but it's not distance, not fairways. It's just greens and maybe good drives gained. So I'm going to prep this for the scoring. But when we come to this year's field, we will go to fairways and greens. We're going to look at long courses because I think that is where I'm leaning right now in terms of, say, greens in regulation on long courses or greens gained. So when we're looking specifically at greens in regulation gained on long courses, your top performers since 2021, Henrik Norlander, Bryce Garnett, Hank Lebiota, Scotty Scheffler, Aaron Wise, Alex Smalley, Ryan Palmer, Joseph Bramlett, Aaron Rye, and Nate Lashley. If you want to look at good drives gained, I think that's appropriate, although I'm still leaning more into the greens and regulation. But your top good drives gained players on long courses: Satoshi Kodaira, Bryce Garnett, Nate Lashley, Matthew Neesmith, Henrik Norlander, Aaron Wise, Alex Smalley, Hank Lebiota, Brian Stewart, and Kyle Stanley. So really only one of these players that I just mentioned in the top 10 for good drives is very poor at greens. That would be Brian Stewart. He's making up his good drives gained by hitting all of the fairways essentially. But everyone else of these 10 generally pretty good. Pretty good at hitting greens in regulation on long courses. I don't think it'd be erroneous to look when a round is easy either. I'm just leaning towards the long course filter for greens. But when a round is easy, since 2021, your top greens in regulation gained players: Scotty Scheffler, Luke List, Dylan Wu, Martin Laird, JJ Spawn, Russell Knox, Kyle Stanley, Aaron Rye, Alex Smalley, and Sam Stevens. I don't think we're going to go into the good drives gained on easy. I think that would be good drives gained on long courses if we go that route. But again, I'm leaning towards the greens and regulation on long courses, but there's the greens when a round is easy. So I'm going to set this for, actually I should probably keep it on the easy round filter, knowing where we're going to next. So I will prep that. And let's take a look at some scoring metrics. We spent a little bit of time last night in Microsoft Excel talking about how much birdies is just the factor here. There are eagles, so we're definitely going to be looking at birdies or better. But the more I looked into it, you see some of these guys that were contending didn't really do a whole lot of damage with eagles. It's just in the birdies. Every single one of the top 16 last year were positive in birdies gained. Only one negative in bogeys avoided, sure, but look at these numbers compared. 9.8, 6.8, 6.8, 8.8, 8.8, 7.8. Over here in the bogeys, you got 4.9, 4.9, 4.9. That's looking like it's the highest in the bogeys. Yeah, 4.9. Now, granted, your winner was one of the 4.9s. But look at this correlation. 1st, 5th, 12th, 15th. That's certainly strong. But when we sort on the birdies, you got a whole lot more single-digit finishes up near the top for birdies gained. So I'll show that to you again. Here's the actual leaderboard. When we sort on birdies, you got a couple, teens in here, 12th, 15th, 17th, 17th, 17th. Compare this range of numbers here, these finishes, with the same range in the bogeys. You got 51st. Hell, I don't know if all of these numbers combined add up to 51. So you had a 51st, 32nd, another 51st. It's all about the birdies here. You've got to go low. Got to go low. And 2021, a whole lot more of the same. Whole lot more of the same. 10.4, 8.4, 12.4. Hell, KH Lee didn't even lead the tournament in birdies gained. 12.4, that is asinine. Again, we'll just do the top 20 again. All 20 positive in birdies gained. Just because I see it out of the corner of my eye, all top 25 positive in birdies gained. Only one really negative in bogeys avoided, sure. But again, look at these numbers, 10.4, 12.4, 8.4, 6.4, whereas in the bogeys, you have a 6, you have a couple of 5s, 3 5s, and very quickly you go down into the 4s and 3s. We'll sort on the statistic. Look at the prevalence of single-digit finishes there, a 26th and the 13th. But then you look at the bogeys avoided, 47th, 26th, 13th, 55th, a little bit further down. So all about the birdies this week, all about the birdies. So reset this, get ready for a statistic that I really want to look at closely. Win a round has been easy since the start of 2021. Your top birdies or better gained players have been Scotty Scheffler, Ryan Palmer, Tom Kim, Taylor Montgomery, Seamus Power, Aaron Wise, Akshay Bhatia, Maverick McNeely, Ben On, and Eric Van Rooyen. I do think it's going to be useful to look at opportunities as well. Don't know if they'll end up in the mixed condition model. They were last year, and I'll show my mixed condition model from last year at the end of the show. They were in there last year. I don't know how I feel about the results, but your top players are giving themselves opportunities on or in rounds that are easy. Hideki, Tom Hoagie, Austin Smotherman, Scotty Scheffler, Alex Smalley, Aaron Wise, Jason Duffner, Doug Gim, Trey Mullinax, and Ben On. Likewise, we can look at birdies or better gained on long courses and opportunities on long courses. We're going to start with opportunities on long courses. Your top players are giving themselves opportunities on long courses. Tom Hoagie, Ryan Palmer, Bo Van Pelt. That's a name for you. Wow. Adam Scott, Lucas Glover, Terrell Hatton, Sam Stevens, Hideki, Roger Sloan, and Ted Potter and Kyle Westmoreland. Sorry, I have to remember all the players that have withdrawn. So in this top 13, we have Michael Thompson has withdrawn, Peter Malnati, and Lonto Griffin. Opportunities on long courses seems to make sense, a little bit of sense. And if you are curious, here are the top players, birdies or better gained on long courses. Sam Stevens, Scotty Scheffler, Akshay Bhatia, Matt Kuchar, Terrell Hatton, J.J. Spawn, Justin Suh, Vincent Norman, and Nate Lashley. But I say it usually every week, but for those who might be tuning in for the first time, I generally like to combine a scoring metric like birdies gained, eagles gained, bogeys avoided. In this case, or this week, birdies are better gained. I like to combine the metric with the filter, say scoring easy to par, scoring difficult to par. That is my preferred, as that is an apples to apples, or keeping everything consistent. But there's no harm in looking at long course filters for those either. But again, I am going to be focusing on birdies or better when a round is easy. I'm not going to go through that top 10 again, but there you go for your viewing pleasure. Before we move on, this is where I'm going to have the bulk of my mixed condition model this week. You just got to go low at TPC Craig Ranch. All right, let's move to proximity. And we had some inconsistent data, I would say. The numbers or the percentage said that the 200 plus wasn't really all that important for success. If I recall correctly, but you have the majority of approach shots come from 200 plus. KH Lee was very good from 200 plus. So we had some conflicting data here. Also, the 125 to 150 was a very high number if I remember from last night. So the top 16 last year, let's just kind of take a look here. We got some big numbers in total procs, which makes sense. These greens are large, so total procs could absolutely be a thing this week. 822 from Hideki, but you also have some, horrendous numbers. Negative 500 from Peter Malnati, positive 565. So if we sort on it, again, you've got some cut makers and some good finishes, especially up here. Every one of these players finished in the top 20. You did have a podium from Hideki. You have a missed cut up here, though, as well. So a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of the correlation between total procs and leaderboard success. Really, there's only one player that is horrendous from the 125 to 150. Thinking about it kind of makes sense because you do have quite a few shorter par 4s here. Now, the majority of par 4s, yes, are from 450 to 5. But you have 4 very, very short par 4s, including one drivable. But if players decide to take an iron, then, that can always add to the 100 to 125. And for the shorter hitters, some of these par 3 or par 5s might not be reachable, especially if it plays into the wind. So maybe they are having to lay up. But really only one player was horrendous from 125 to 150. If we sort on it, not terribly strong. You got some pretty high miscuts. You do have a couple of podium finishes up here, but a lot more clunkers. What I'm really interested in is this 200 plus. And that looks to be the strongest so far. Looking at total, I don't know. Total procs looks like it's probably more correlating than 200. It's somewhat close. Scott Gostkowski was pretty good from 200 plus, but missed the cut. Otherwise, you've got some good finishes here. A clunker from Duncan. Again, a podium from Hideki. Xander top 5. Top 20, top 15. KH Lee's also up here. I believe this is the first proximity he's been up here. Like, look at KH Lee's total procs. It was horrendous. But he was very good from 200 plus. So, I don't know. Don't have a strong feeling after looking at last year's. Maybe 2021 will help us out, make it worse. Who knows? Let's look at the top 20. A little bit more consistent in terms of total procs here, in terms of the guys that were above field average in terms of total procs. Now, a couple of, again, missed cuts, pretty high, but KH Lee was 5th in total procs. 3 players finishing inside the top 20, top 15, a podium. Okay, not the strongest, but not the worst either. The 200 plus is pretty hit and miss, to be honest with you. Pretty hit and miss. 125 to 150 is consistent again. With the at least the players that are finishing in the top 16 or 20 or so. But when you sort on the statistic, kind of dwindles in terms of upper leaderboard success, because you have missed cuts very high, some clunkers, Martin Laird, Bryson. So this is why I always struggle with procs. 200 plus, this is your highest in terms of upper leaderboard finishes, but Sam Burns, Joseph Brantley, but you also got some miscuts up here. So we'll look at 2 different things. I think we're going to look at total procs and 200 plus. I think that is what is showing itself in the data. At least that's what I am seeing. And put it in the comments. What do you see? I would be very intrigued to hear from the community how you are seeing the previous leaderboards and the proximity metrics. But since the start of this calendar year, 2023 only, your top total procs players: Nate Lashley, Ryan Armour, Lucas Glover, Michael Kim, Justin Suh, Davis Riley, Tom Hoagie, Doc Redman, Kevin Roy, and Terrell Hatton. In fact, 3 of those players are top 10 in the 200 plus. You have Nate Lashley was first in total, 4th in the 200 plus. Tom Hoagie's number 1 in 200 plus, and Kevin Roy is 10th in 200 plus. If we look specifically at just 200 plus approaches, Tom Hoagie, Augusto Nunez, Minwoo Lee, Nate Lashley, Charlie Hoffman, Austin Cook, Austin Smotherman, Adam Scott, Tom Kim, Kevin Roy, and Satoshi Kodaira. So, again, kind of like last week, Quail Hollow demands 200 plus approaches, but it wasn't really a big indicator in terms of success. So I only had it 5%. I can see myself doing the same with the 200 plus and with the total procs. I can see an argument for both. Kind of don't know where I'm leaning in that regard right now. All right, moving quickly to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Hey, Darnell, thanks for jumping in chat. Going to be a pretty quick show. Got some severe weather moving in. But yeah, feeling good this week. I had some confidence going into the Wells Fargo that blew up in my face. So hopefully I can, get the ship turned around, if you will. If you haven't seen, there have been a lot of field changes. The biggest one, Jordan Spieth, is out this week, and his status for the PGA Championship is in serious jeopardy now. He is citing a left wrist injury. But those 9 field changes are the 9 players that have withdrawn so far this week. For your info, if you haven't seen it, Peter Malnati, Callum Tarrant, Bo Hostler, Nikolai Højgaard, Sam Ryder, Michael Thompson, Camilo Villegas, Lonto Griffin, and Jordan Spieth. Yeah, I'm not playing anyone at the top. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad strategy. Of course, I have not looked at prices. I always start my DFS focus on Tuesdays. I like to look at the data as without as much skew as possible. That's why I don't like to look at the pricing. But I don't hate that idea. Not knowing where Spieth was, I imagine he was one of the tops. Scotty Scheffler is going to have to be very expensive. I imagine he's also going to be very chalky. So I don't hate that idea off the top. But with me not knowing any of the prices, I can't say it for definitively. But thanks for jumping in chat. As always, always appreciated. Whenever you're able to catch the show, you always jump into chat. The par 3s, pretty darn mitigated here in terms of importance. I don't think there is a length that matters the most. So your top par 3 performers: Siwoo Kim, Stefan Jaeger, Matt Kuchar, Hideki, Doug Gim, Justin Suh, JJ Spawn, Scotty Scheffler, Christian Bezuidenhout, and Harry Hall. Realize that that I took you to the par 3 page. Didn't show you the prior leaderboards. I'll just show you 2022 because 2021 is a lot of the same. Not a lot of high numbers in here. Just being honest in terms of the par 3s, especially for the players that have elite finishes. It's just not a big deal. It really isn't. You see, even sorted on the statistic, you got missed cuts up here, clunkers. Par 3s just aren't a big deal. 1.9, 0.9, 3.1, but look at all the missed cuts in there. 4.2, a little bit better. So maybe the 200 to 225 if there is a range. And then 1.2. So par 3's pretty darn mitigated in importance. Let's move to the par 4s and then the par 5s where we really want to spend a lot of focus before we go to Microsoft Excel. Par 4s, they are not as important here as other full field courses. We saw that in Microsoft Excel last night. It also makes sense logically. There is one less par 4. This is a par 71. You still have your full 4 par 3s and your full 4 par 5s. You just have one less par 4. So getting a little bit mitigated in terms of importance. You still got to play them well, though. If there's a range, it's probably the 450 to 5. Let's see, a 3, 0.7, 4.4. Pretty strong correlation there. 4.7. Other than Sam Burns' miscut last year, that's some very strong correlation. And then a 2.9. So it was the 450 to 5 last year. If we look at 2021's par 4s, top 20. That's what we've been doing all night. Keep it consistent. It's only one player negative in terms of par 4s. We have 5. That's pretty high. 2.3. Not a lot there. 4.8 and your winner. 450 to 5s were actually a little bit more mitigated in 2021. So it's between these two ranges. I'm leaning 450 to 5 because that's where the majority of the par 4s fall here at TBC Craig Ranch. But your top par 4 performers this calendar year in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler, Jason Day, Tyrrell Hatton, Akshay Bhatia, Tom Kim, Michael Kim, Stefan Jaeger, Eric Cole, Siwoo Kim, and Taylor Montgomery. Looking specifically at the range most important here at TBC Craig Ranch: Scotty Scheffler, Carson Young, Sam Stevens, Siwoo Kim, Ben On, Jimmy Walker, Tyrrell Hatton, Matty Schmid, Stefan Jaeger, and Jason Day. Finally, we'll move to par 5s. That is the most important part of the golf course behind maybe birdies in general. You see KH Lee a 7.2. I think he made up more in par 5s than he did on par 4s. You see all of it in the 550 to 6, basically. If we sort on it, first, second, a top 25, which is a good finish, but nothing elite. First, second, top 25, top 5, top 10, top 20. Pretty strong correlation there. And 5.4, a 4, but a lot less correlating than 2.9. So most of your strokes gained are coming in the 550 to 6. At least they were last year. You look at 2021, more of the same. Although KH Lee did not play them as well, you still had some stellar performances. Same Burns 7.5, Schwartzel 6.5. There's a 5.5 down here just off your screen, and Carlos Ortiz. So look at that correlation there. Just huge amounts of correlation. Other than Patrick Rogers, a very middling finish. But you sort on it, 5.5, 4.4. Surprisingly, 500 to 550 were more important in 2021. So it's close. I don't think there is a definitive range for par 5s. If there is, it's the 550 to 6. But your top par 5 performers this calendar year: Scotty Scheffler, Kevin Chappell, Dylan Wu, Matt Kuchar, Nate Lashley, Sam Stevens, Jimmy Walker, Terrell Hatton, Chris Stroud, Patton Desire, and K.H. Lee. A lot of those players are top 10 also in terms of 550 to 6. Scheffler, Chappell, Dylan Wu, Matt Kuchar, Kazire, K.H. Lee. So a lot of overlap, a lot of parallel there between the par 5s and what I think are the most important length here at TBC Craig Ranch. All right, that's going to do it for the Fantasy National portion. Let's move to Microsoft Excel very quickly as I try to rattle through this show here. We're going to start over at let's look at some specifics around TBC Craig Ranch. We looked at TBC Craig Ranch against other full field courses, but let's kind of dig into the specific data and see where a lot of these numbers are coming in. Bruce, really like the 7K range this week. Kind of like what I was saying to Darnell. I don't start my DFS prep until Tuesdays. And the reason being, the vision will be skewed. But let me pull up Fantasy National. I like to look at the stats, the specific data, and I'll unskew the vision. I like to look at it without as much bias as possible. Meaning that if I know Scotty Scheffler is 12,000 and Jason Day is 10,000, I'm going to have a more favorable view of Jason Day from the start just because he's cheaper, and I don't want to have that bias. If you are able to do that, all the power to you. I am aware of my weakness analytically, so that's why I prefer to look at things in a vacuum, especially when I'm digging really deep into the data like I do in the Data Dive show, and I'll start my DFS stuff tomorrow. Having said that, with the 7Ks, I can't imagine that I would want to go into the 6Ks knowing that the relative strength of field this week is pretty poor, and with one of the favorites having already withdrawn in Jordan Spieth, I imagine that chalk is going to get moved around a little bit, just distributed among the rest of the upper portion of the price board. I have to imagine Scotty Scheffler is going to be pretty chalky. I have to imagine Hideki is going to be pretty highly priced, or is highly priced. Tom Kim, I imagine, is going to be very chalky, probably very high priced. So I don't hate the idea of a balanced lineup. With that said, I don't know the players that are in the 7K. Again, just explaining my rationale for why the answer is, sounds good. I don't really know because I don't start DFS until tomorrow. But if you want, feel free to throw in a couple of names into chat. I'll be more than happy to give you, just kind of a quick snap thought about it. But I can't say definitively, the entire 7K range. I do the same pick out of my favorite guys first, then look at salaries. Yeah, different ways to go about it. I'm just gathering all of the data first, and then kind of weaving and meandering my way through it that way. No right or wrong, just a different way to do it. Let's quickly look through some specifics about TBC Craig Ranch. In terms of strokes gained, you see strokes gained approach. Just the biggest factor here, putting is going to be a big thing. So I don't know what I'm going to do with putting yet. I know it's going to be bent. These greens are bent. Now, do I want to take a chance and say that the greens are going to be fast? Do I want to take a chance and say that they're going to be average? I might just do bent grass greens. The problem is if I just do bent, you're bringing in the Masters, you're bringing in the Memorial, where those are lightning speed, and I can 100% guarantee that these aren't going to be lightning speed greens. So trying to decide what I want to do with putting this week, but it is a very important factor here at TPC Craig Ranch, or at least it has been the first 2 years. But the most important thing we're going to be focused on is strokes gained approach in terms of a strokes gained view in the mixed condition model. Moving into driving statistics, talked about it a little bit last night and more tonight. Driving distance for as long as this course isn't really a big deal. You see, essentially the top 30 players were average. It's just not a big deal. It was more so the fairways last year. Now, the highest number is in terms of greens. Again, these greens are large, but with it being a long course, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. I'm still having a little bit of trouble doing that. It might honestly be good drives gained. It might be that, as it's been pretty consistent both years. So in terms of driving statistics, it's one of these two. The pure or the raw data says it's the greens, but I don't know. I just have a hard time saying that greens in regulation are going to be really important when the greens are massive or large and they're easy to hit. So I don't know. That doesn't sit right with me on a Monday evening. Moving into scoring metrics, I mean, this is as clear as it can be. It's all about birdies gained. This might actually be the highest number in birdies gained. I'm going to cheat. I know the view is very, very small for you, but I'm going to cheat. Is there anything that's a 4? No. This is the highest number in terms of birdies gained on the PGA Tour in terms of full field courses. TPC Craig Ranch is the most important course to gain birdies. This is a birdie fest. So in your research this week, going into Tuesday morning, into Wednesday, as you prepare your lineups, as you finalize which wagers you want to make, focus on players that go low. Yes, they might get a bogey or two, but focus on players that gain the birdies. That is where it is here at TPC Craig Ranch. I can tell you this is, at least on a Monday evening, I haven't made the mixed condition model, obviously. I'm thinking 25, maybe even 30% in birdies or better gained statistic. It is just the most important part of TPC Craig Ranch. So, and that shows it right there. The real benefit of coming into looking at the raw data, looking to see if there's a specific range in the par 3s, 4s, and 5s that really matter. Generally speaking, if a range is making up maybe 60% or more of the strokes gained total, then you really start to hone in on it. 200 to 225 is making up about half, maybe a little bit less than total par 3s, but total par 3s really aren't all that important anyway. So again, this looks like it could be another 5% week in total par 3s, might be 0% like I had for the Wells Fargo last week, and it turned out to be somewhat accurate. I won't say it was a great mixed condition model, but it turned out to be somewhat accurate, as it wasn't all that important, only a 1.32 last week. So very little emphasis on the par 3s. Par 4s, again, if there is a range, it's the 455, but it's not even making up 40% of the total in terms of strokes gained par 4. Two very, very wildly different years here in terms of the importance. Like last year, the par 4s were pretty darn important. In 2021, they weren't at all. Same for the 455. So it'll be good to have a third year just to kind of see where things fall in line. Again, it just looks like it's total par 4s. Looks like chat disconnected. Hopefully I'm still alive. If I'm still alive, if you're in chat, please give a thumbs up or give me something. I've got some weather moving in, and it said my chat disconnected, so I'm hoping I'm still live. All right, so par fours, I don't really see a whole lot there, and then par fives, again, a little bit less than half from these 550 to 6s of the par fives. So thank you, appreciate that. All right, good. Now the par fives have been much more stable, much more consistent, which as a statistician I really like. That means you can depend on this statistic for providing what value you think it does, high or low. So these have been the par fives have been very, very consistent the first 2 years, and they've been pretty darn important as well, at least compared to other full field courses. That's the Wells Fargo. Sorry. Scroll down on 44.5, 50 in terms of the number. All right, proximity. Total procs, pretty big number there. 200 plus looks big as well, but we just went through the prior leaderboards. I didn't see a whole lot there. The 125 to 150 has been very consistent and very important. But this is a long course, so that's why I have no problem admitting that proximity is the weakest of my golf analytics. Anyway, there's a look at TPC Craig Ranch from a number crunch, a specific raw data perspective. Very quickly, let's move to my mixed condition model last year, and I will comfortably admit that it was not a very good mixed condition model, at least in terms of results. My top 20, I had 6 missed cuts in my top 20. That's a little bit on the high end. I'd prefer 4 to 5, 20 to 25%. I mean, it's golf. Things are going to happen. But 6 is a little bit high. Not only that, I didn't have the winner, and I only had 2 top 5s. So overall, this was a pretty poor performing in terms of final results mixed condition model. 20% in approach, that seemed appropriate. Might back it off to 15, maybe keep it at 20 because it is such an integral part of TPC Craig Ranch. This, I can tell you, I'm jumping the percentage up quite a bit. Birdies are better gained when it's easy. I'm just going to use the same statistic and filter and increase the percentage. Par fives, very important. Along those same lines there. Here's 10% of the mixed condition model I'm getting back. I'm not doing anything in terms of stroke gain total, but I'm definitely going to be using the easy to par filter a lot more this week or on these other statistics. So there's 10, there's 5 more, and 5 more that I'm getting back. So I'm going to get back 20% at least, just in terms of stroke gain total. This is easy to par, as you can see. This is 5% on long courses, 5% in wind. And this is why I go at the beginning of the DFS Tactics show, I give you the strokes gain total, easy, windy if it applies, long courses, just to give you that refresher in terms of just total performance, a good baseline. So there's 20% I'm getting back, but I was factoring in easy and long courses. 10% good drives gained. Okay, so I did use good drives gained. I didn't use greens last year. I used good drives gained. Interesting. 10% par threes. That's a complete error on my part. Par threes just don't seem to be very important here. 200 plus, I put at 5%. Opportunities gained, I put at 5%. Interesting. Okay. Now, if I were to sort on the leaderboard from last year, meaning KH Lee here, Jordan Spieth, the 4 guys that tied for third, so on and so forth. I went down to the top 24, just convenient for ties. And these were the predictive analytics, or the predictive numbers here. So for the players that finished in the top 24, they averaged being 64th coming in an approach. That's not very predictive. Par 5s weren't predictive at all. Good drives gained was. Good drives gained actually was the most predictive of the statistics used. Then easy courses, and that's why I'm going to be using easy courses on as many filters as I feel comfortable with this week, because it was better than actually no, it looks like long courses was slightly better. The wind wasn't too much, but Shoshkin total long courses also was fairly predicted, but good drives gained was the most. Opportunities gained here also at a 57, fairly decent, but the par fives weren't predictive, so somebody was very bad at the par fives and played very, very well. See if we can find that guy, Tom Hoagie. So he finished in the top 20. He'd come in to TPC Craig Ranch playing atrocious on the par fives. Okay, same with Nate Lashley. So, I mean, good weeks happen, sure. But you can see just it wasn't a very, very predictive mixed condition model in terms of results or in the metrics that we looked at. And that gives me a little bit of concern because I'm around the same type of stuff. 10% in par threes. I'm probably going to be doing greens and regulation instead of good drives, but I can see good drives. But I mean, the majority of my mixed condition model I see being roughly the same, changing some percentages around. But par fives, birdies are better, and strokes gained approach are the three biggest factors that I believe will be key here at TPC Craig Ranch. So hopefully last year was maybe a bit of an outlier. Or it might be 2 straight years where I have to go back to the drawing board. We'll see. But anyway, there was my mixed condition model from last year. We're going to end the show off with players' specific performance here at TPC Craig Ranch the first 2 years. I'm going to remove Jordan Spieth. He is no longer in the field this week. Let's sort on some of these important statistics that we have seen through the night and see who has played the best in that regard here at TPC Craig Ranch. So your top strokes gained approach player, no surprise, it's your 2-time defending champion K.H. Lee. Hideki, again, no surprise, he's played well here. Also is known for his ball striking. Anytime you can get Hideki even field average at putting, let alone positive, you got to take note. And Hideki's been very positive in 2 years here at TPC Craig Ranch. We'll get into putting here in a second, but I don't want to forget that. I mean, Hideki is positive in putting. Take a note of that. Mark Hubbard has been very good at irons here, and he's played pretty well. Average finish of a 33rd has made the cut both years. Pat Gazier, Scott Stallings, Matt Kuchar, J.J. Spawn, a little bit less to an extent, but played it fine. All right, let's go into the putting. Who's been the top putters 2 years at TPC Craig Ranch? We have Michael Tom. Oh, well, he's not in the field, so. Yep. Okay, so Bezadenhout, 8. He gained 8 in his year that he played here. Gosh dang it. Malnati's not here. You can see I have not updated this spreadsheet for all the field changes. Stallings, there's K.H. Lee, your champion. Bryce Garnett. Seamus Powers played very well here. Makes a lot of sense. He really, really enjoys easy courses. He devours easy courses. Generally has a harder time when it's difficult. So seeing Seamus Power there, pretty interesting. Matt Kuchar again. Michael Glick, 2 for 2. Now the finishes, or average finish isn't all that inspiring, but he is 2 for 2 in making the cut and his putt well here. Troy Merritt, Davis Riley, both only 1 time. Harry Higgs 0 for 2, but he's putt well, if you're a Harry Higgs fan. Ryan Palmer, Texas native, doing it off the tee and putting. It's always a good combination. All right. I still think I'm going to sort on greens and regulation. I think that is the statistic that's going to matter in the driving page view. Could still be good drives gained, but I'm gonna lean towards greens. So your top greens and regulation players: Troy Merritt, Tom Kim, K.H. Lee's the highest of the players that has played it both years for obvious reasons. Mark Hubbard, Matt Kuchar, JJ Spawn, Scotty Scheffler, 2 for 2. Hideki, Ryan Armour, 1 for 2. I thought it was 0 for 2 for a second. Sorry. You can kind of scratch Ryan Armour. He's only 1 for 2. Ryan Palmer. Scott Stallings a little bit further down there. Okay. Birdies gained. It is the be-all, end-all here at TPC Craig Ranch. So who is the highest birdies gained after KH Lee? I imagine KH Lee is the top. Scott Stallings. Interesting. Average finish of 14th. Vincent Whaley. Okay. Vincent Whaley's played well here. Scotty Scheffler, Hideki, Ryan Palmer, Adam Scott, 1 for 1. Kuchar, Kazire, Joseph Bramlett. First time we've probably said him tonight. 2 for 2. Average finish inside the top 30. Gaining birdies. Cameron Champ, 2 for 2. Wesley Bryan, 2 for 2. All right. I'm going to skip the 3s and the 4s. Let's just go to the 5s. We know that they're the most important here. So your top par 5 performers. David Lipsky, it's only 1 year. Then KH Lee. McNeely, Scott Brown, Ryan Palmer again. Davis Riley, Tom Kim. Stefan Jaeger, 1 time still. But Zadenhout played the par 5s okay. Scheffler, Hideki. Vincent Whaley. Champ. Adam Schenk, 2 for 2 for what it's worth. Mark Hubbard, James Power. All right. I'll end it off with 200 plus. Let's do 200 plus, and I think that'll be a wrap for the night. So your top players at TPC Craig Ranch, specifically from the 200 plus approach: Cameron Champ, Scott Brown, Zadenhout, only 1 time. Scott Stallings. Lee Biota, 1 for 2. Pretty high in the average finish for having a missed cut. Okay. Hideki. J-Day. Important to see J-Day's only 1 for 2 here with average finish of 62nd. So, all right. A little lower. Wesley Bryan. James Hahn. 1 for 2, but an average finish inside the top 40. Okay. Lipsky, Taryn. All right. I'm going to resort this back on the best average finish for you all. And that is going to do it for the Data Dive show this evening. Again, apologies if it felt a little rushed. Well, actually a little bit over on time, which is surprising to me, but I like to talk. Got some weather moving in, so I wanted to make sure I gave you all some information to use moving forward for your research this week. A reminder, I will be live Wednesday evening for the DFS Tactics show. Finalize all of our lineups, all of your strategies, player A versus player B, who we're going to pivot away from, who we're going to pivot to, all of that good stuff. That'll be Wednesday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And as of now, I believe that the Friday Night Chill stream will happen again this week. It was fun to get into that and hopefully get into a semi-regular routine in terms of Friday night, looking at showdown or round 3, round 4 showdown, weekend golf, maybe even a little baseball. But Darnell, Bruce, thanks for jumping in chat. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, looking at statistics and sports statistics and trying to win a little money in the process. So for all of the wagers you have made so far this week for the Byron Nelson, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Byron Nelson, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.